This was no routine supply run. It was a critical push to tighten Russia's Azov corridor, a move that threatened to choke Ukraine's southern lifelines. In seconds, the calm would shatter, and what followed became a phased strike no one saw coming. The silence of the Azov Sea would not last long. For weeks before the convoy's move, Ukraine had laid the groundwork for what was about to unfold. High-altitude reconnaissance drones orbited more than 15,000 feet above the coastline, quietly streaming encrypted imagery back to command posts deep inside Ukrainian-held territory. Along the shoreline, special operations teams hidden in fishing huts and abandoned warehouses tracked every Russian patrol with night vision scopes and laser rangefinders. Their mission was simple but critical: confirm when a high-value target left port and ensure its course toward the contested corridor between Mariupol and Berdyansk. That moment came as mobile radar units positioned near Zaporizhia lit up the screens. The Russian formation, 2 landing craft and 1 patrol corvette, was now steaming north at roughly 25 knots, well within striking distance. The corvette, bristling with short-range radar and naval guns, was the key. As long as its systems remained active, Russian crews could sweep the low skies and surface waters for threats, making any Ukrainian strike far more dangerous. The order came down without hesitation. The corvette had to be blinded first. Once its radar was neutralized, the landing craft would be left exposed, unable to defend themselves against the multi-layered attack Ukraine had prepared. What had begun as silent observation was about to transition into the first phase of a coordinated strike. The strike began just minutes after Ukrainian radar confirmed the Russian convoy's heading. Phase 1 of the operation, neutralizing the patrol corvette's eyes, was already set in motion. At low altitude, hugging the water at barely 100 feet, a small decoy drone crept toward the corvette's detection arc. Its body carried a radar reflector, amplifying its signature to appear far larger than its actual size. To Russian operators staring at their screens, it looked like a heavy kamikaze drone bearing straight down on their formation. The corvette's radar locked, and within seconds, its 30mm autocannon thundered to life. Tracers ripped across the night sky, tearing into the false target. The decoy drone burst into pieces above the waves, scattering debris and convincing the Russians they had just intercepted the main threat. But in chasing the illusion, the corvette committed a fatal mistake. It fixed its radar and weapons on a single sector, leaving a blind corridor open across the opposite flank. That was where the real killer approached. Skimming the surface at less than 50 feet, guided by GPS and preloaded waypoints, a loitering munition drifted silently in from the seaward side. No radio chatter, no active emissions, just a quiet glide through the dark. At roughly 600 yards, it climbed sharply, exposing its silhouette for only a heartbeat before slamming into the corvette's radar mast. The warhead punched through the antenna housing, detonating with a flash that shattered the mast and sent shards of metal tumbling across the deck. The shock wave fried the radar's control circuits, knocking out power and plunging the ship's sensors into silence. Smoke poured from the damaged superstructure as crew scrambled to contain the fire. But the critical damage was already done. The corvette, once the guardian of the formation, was now blind. In less than 3 minutes, Ukraine had stripped away the convoy's low-altitude defense. Every vessel in that narrow channel was now sailing exposed, their movements visible and unprotected. The stage was set for the next phase of the strike. The corvette's radar lay in ruins, smoke curling from its shattered mast, but the Ukrainians knew the job was only half finished. A blind ship could still fight with guns, and the landing craft it escorted still carried over 80 Marines bound for the shoreline. The next phase had to hit fast, from multiple angles, before the Russians could regroup. From the mouth of the Kalmius River, nearly 7 miles away, 3 unmanned surface vessels, USVs, slipped into the dark waters. Each one was about 16 feet long, packed with a shaped charge warhead weighing close to 40 pounds. Their small profiles blended into the chop of the Azov Sea, nearly indistinguishable from driftwood on radar. And their engines ran so low that even the corvette's passive sensors couldn't pick them up. Guided by GPS waypoints, they advanced in formation, spreading into a wide fan to strike from different vectors. As the crippled corvette tried to steady itself, damage control teams scrambled across the deck. That was when the first USV struck. Closing at over 40 knots, it came in low, throwing a thin white wake across the surface. By the time a Russian gunner spotted the shape breaking through the gloom, it was less than 200 yards away. The autocannon roared, but the stream of tracers splashed wide. The USV slammed into the starboard hull of its ships. The blast tore open the plating, sending a column of black smoke and sparks into the night. Flames licked out from ruptured fuel lines, and the ship shuddered under the shock. The sudden hit forced chaos onto the formation. The two landing craft veered in opposite directions, throttling hard to avoid the same fate. But in scattering, they broke the protective screen the corvette was meant to provide. For Ukraine, that gap was the opening. High above, two loitering munitions waiting for their cue dove out of the darkness. With the corvette bleeding fire and the landing craft splitting formation, the convoy's defenses were stretched thin. The drones arrowed downward, their engines shrieking as they streaked toward the vulnerable silhouettes below. In less than 5 minutes, Ukraine had not only blinded the convoy, but torn it apart, forcing the Russians into disarray. The Azov Sea, once under their control, had become a kill zone, and the assault was only just beginning. The strike on the corvette had ripped the heart out of the Russian formation, but Moscow's commanders were not about to let the convoy die without a fight. From the airfield at Mariupol, less than 20 miles inland, two Ka-29 assault helicopters scrambled into the night sky. Each carried rockets, heavy machine guns, and squads of naval infantry ready to fast rope if needed. Their mission was clear: drive off the drones and cover the retreating landing craft before the situation spiraled completely out of control. As the twin machines roared low over the Azov Sea at nearly 150 miles per hour, their searchlights stabbed into the dark waters. To the Russian crews, it seemed a straightforward task: eliminate the slow drones harassing their ships. But Ukraine had anticipated this very move. Waiting on the coast and aboard disguised fishing boats offshore were teams controlling dozens of mini UAVs, each no larger than a backpack, programmed to rise in swarms at the first sign of Russian air power. Within moments, the Ka-29 flew headfirst into a sky thick with decoys. Small quadcopters swarmed at different altitudes, reflecting and scattering signals, forcing the helicopters' targeting systems to lock onto false positives. Tracer fire arced wildly as Russian gunners wasted precious ammunition, chasing machines no bigger than a seagull. That chaos was the opening Ukrainian special forces needed. From a concealed position on the shoreline, a soldier shouldered a U.S.-supplied man-pads. The infrared seeker locked instantly on the hot exhaust of the lead Ka-29. With a sharp crack, the missile leapt skyward. In less than 4 seconds, it slammed into the helicopter's tailboom. The aircraft spun violently, flames gushing from its side, before plunging nose first into the sea. The explosion lit up the waves like daylight, sending debris across the water. The second Ka-29 banked hard, pilots shouting over scrambled radios, but the swarm and the threat of more missiles forced it to break off. The convoy below was now leaderless, scattered, and burning. What had begun as an organized counterattack unraveled into confusion. In the span of minutes, Russia's attempt to wrest control back had collapsed, leaving its ships exposed, its air support crippled, and the initiative firmly in Ukraine's hands. The destruction of the first landing craft sent shockwaves through the Russian convoy. With one vessel sinking and the second crippled by fire, panic rippled across the formation. Commanders on shore could no longer ignore the scale of the disaster. Within minutes, orders went out from Mariupol airfield scrambled the Ka-29 second. These assault helicopters, designed for maritime operations, lifted off with their side doors open, gunners ready behind heavy machine guns. Each aircraft carried rockets and flares, tasked with beating back the drones and stabilizing what remained of the convoy. The pair thundered low over the coastline at nearly 150 miles per hour, rotor blades chopping through the humid night air. To Russian crews below, their arrival was a glimmer of hope. If the Ka-29 second could sweep the skies clear, the convoy might yet limp to safety. But Ukraine had prepared for this very response. From concealed launch points along the coast, dozens of miniature drones suddenly rose into the air. Barely larger than hobby quadcopters, they swarmed in unpredictable patterns, darting at multiple altitudes. Their signatures clogged Russian sensors, feeding false returns and confusing targeting systems. To the helicopter gunners, the sky seemed filled with fast-moving threats, impossible to prioritize. Tracers arced wildly as they tried to cut down machines no bigger than birds. That chaos opened the door for Ukraine's hidden teams. On shore, a special forces operator shouldered a U.S.-made MANPADS launcher. The missile locked instantly onto the hot exhaust of the Leader-29. With a sharp crack, the weapon fired. In less than 4 seconds, the missile struck home, exploding against the helicopter's tailbone. The aircraft lurched violently, spun out of control, and plunged nose first into the sea. Flames and debris lit up the water, casting eerie light across the stricken convoy. The second Ka-29 banked sharply away, dumping flares and pulling hard to escape the kill zone. But with its wingman gone and the swarm still clouding its sensors, it had no choice but to retreat. What had begun as a Russian counterattack disintegrated into chaos. Instead of saving the convoy, the helicopter's intervention only underscored the collapse of control. Ukraine's layered defenses held firm, and the momentum remained firmly in their hands. The retreat of the surviving Ka-29 left the Russian convoy exposed, scattered, and leaderless. Smoke from the crippled landing craft drifted across the waves, while the corvette, already wounded, struggled to maintain speed. At the center of the chaos, the command vessel attempted to break away, steering south at nearly 20 knots in a desperate bid to escape the kill zone. Its radar was damaged but still flickering, the last functioning eye of the operation. Ukraine's commanders had been waiting for this exact moment. From hidden batteries along the coastline, Hawaii Mars launchers were rolled into firing position. Coordinates gathered by drones and coastal observers had already been uploaded. At the signal, a ripple of rockets screamed into the night sky, their bright trails cutting across the horizon. Traveling at over Mach 2, the munitions covered the distance in less than a minute. The command ship's crew barely had time to react. The first rocket slammed into the midsection, detonating with a thunderclap that split steel and fireball. The second followed seconds later, tearing through the radar housing. Screens went black instantly. The vessel plunged into blindness before flames spread across its decks. In under 20 minutes from the first strike, the convoy was finished. One corvette burning, both landing craft destroyed, and the command ship silenced. The Azov Sea was no longer Russia's corridor. It had become Ukraine's kill zone. The final HIMARS barrage sealed the fate of the convoy, and with it, Russia's immediate plans to reinforce the Mariupol sector. In less than 20 minutes of combat, Ukraine had accomplished what once seemed unthinkable. A patrol corvette burning, 2 landing craft destroyed beyond recovery, and a Ka-29 helicopter lying at the bottom of the Azov Sea. The resupply mission meant to bolster Russian control of the coast ended in total collapse. Strategically, the consequences ran far deeper than the wreckage on the water. By annihilating this formation, Ukraine effectively severed Russia's ability to run supply lines across the Azov corridor. What had once been a contested waterway was suddenly transformed into a hazard zone where every Russian ship could be hunted. Moscow now faced a hard choice risk. More vessels in waters Ukraine had proven it could dominate, or retreat its smaller fleet back to the relative safety of Berdyansk. Either way, the pressure on Ukraine's southern defenses eased dramatically. The question now lingers. Will Russia dare to send its ships into the Azov again? Or has this strike marked the end of its naval presence there? Beyond the military scorecard, the battle carried a deeper message. The fusion of UAVs and USVs had shown that creativity and coordination